So this morning, Mark had to go down and chase some cows off our property. We are, I don't know, we're gonna go look and fix some fencing so the cows can stay off our garden. Would you ever take a bulldozer through here?
Yeah.
Really? It wouldn't like roll or roll backwards or anything like that?
No, I mean, the idea is you cut flat ground as you go.
Oh.
So the machine stays on flat ground.
Oh. Oh, it's right here. The ribbon's right there in front of you, 12 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Good eyes.
Thanks.
The ribbon lines up with that post, which is right down there, straight in this line. So this is the property line as I'm holding my arms. But you can see that path we came up is already kind of shelved, a little bit flat.
Yeah.
So we got to keep going up that. I would pull any of this deadfall and any trees that had to come out along the way, and I'd lay them from tree to tree to help hold back the dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna rot out over time, but hopefully give it enough time to help the soil build up
And the vegetation grow.
Vegetation regrow, and give us room to cut in and use the material to kind of hold back, but cut it wide so that it's way in, so the whole road surface is in native. It's not necessarily in an attempt to build it up, but just to stabilize the edge of the shoulder.
Now, would you do this with your big excavator? It looks like it would be too big.
It would be the best tool to come in with initially, because I could pluck trees. I can pick up the deadfall that's crossing, lay it strategically, rather than just having it push it all off and see where it goes, especially with the roadway down there. I can do it very controlled with the excavator.
Well, you have to do that when I'm not here.
Question we get asked all the time by anybody we run into, friends and family and everything, is if we have issues with deer on our garden. And we've never had an issue with the wildlife. We've had occasion where squirrels or cottontail rabbits will come in and they'll eat the flower buds right off of the flowers. Occasionally they'll eat on the cabbage a little bit or something like that. But one problem that we do have is the range cows. We are a little over half mile to the rangeland boundary. We don't border any of that rangeland. The cows came down about 5 or 6 days ago, and they've been hanging out across the road from us. They've pushed over the neighbor's fence over there and was hanging out down in his place for several days. But the last 3 days, they ripped through my beets. Ate all the beet tops off of my beet production. Started browsing on some of the onions. Laid a few others over. Potatoes they left alone. The cabbages, we only lost about 3 cabbages. They ate a couple of them right down pretty hard, and 2 of them right down to the root. Our tomatoes are fine, and our squash off the hill here seem to be fine. Don't mind too much when they come around. I try to keep them out, but they fully wiped out all of my corn. Corn was a little bit spotty this year, but everything that was standing is eaten right off. I did overseed it because it was spotty, and I'm glad I did then and not any sooner, I guess, because some of that is just barely starting to sprout. Cowboys come up and pushed the cows out last night and pushed them back up to the mountain. They were pushing the herd up, and I could hear them way up the canyon. Hear the cows bellowing a little bit, and I saw at least 1 cow-calf pair still down in the neighbor's place. It's a little frustrating. Idaho's a fence-out state, so the way that the laws read is you need to have a full enclosure that meets the legal description of a enclosure fence. And most of our fences are that way, but we have not taken the time or had the time to finish fencing the rest of our frontage. We've got a strip from our driveway down over here. We have a strip prepared from our well pad to meet to there, but we haven't gotten the fence stretched there. But the cows like to move down the road below my well. There's a spot in the creek with an old, really old orchard growth that's in there. And they like to push the fence over on that guy's property. And it's right next to that driveway I put in this spring, and the pipe and everything. And they like to push that fence right over and go bed down in that orchard in the daytime when they have water close by, good shade from the old orchard. And then they just work his property, eating any grass that's on it. When that grass gets worked down pretty hard, they start crossing that creek, coming back up and start working this whole hillside of mine above my well. So they just step right across the road and start working the hillside. Mostly they're pushed out now, so hopefully that won't be an issue. But the problem is that they come up early or mid-June usually, and they come off the mountain mid or late September. We're only a month in, and they've already had the entire herd come down and push over his place and been working my place. So we still have 2 more months before they're coming off this mountain. And that's going to be a problem. Typically, you don't get a real hard push from the cows coming down off the mountain. I would say usually not until early mid-August. So they're a full month early coming down off the mountain in droves like they do. So that's got us kind of concerned. I think the garden's going to recover okay enough. Typically our grow window up here is only about 90 to 110 days. We're now like 45 days into the grow window, so I think we have enough time to let the beets regrow if we had to. That shifted some of our priorities for the day, or for this week, and we're going to have to get some strong fencing in where we need it so that we don't have this issue be a reoccurring problem, because it's too early right now to have them pushing so hard and not have some containment for our place. So we got to go into fencing mode. Typically we like to do that early in the spring where there's a lot of moisture in the ground, and if we have to pound the post, they pound in easier and they seem to hold tighter. But we kind of don't have the options right now. We went and picked up a few supplies that we needed. It's only about a 300-foot stretch, we estimate, from the corner down to the existing fence at the well. And then it's about another 280 feet from the well gate up to our existing fence that's on the frontage. We have another stretch from our gate to the corner that's about another 200 or 220 feet. So that's going to be our goal for the next 2 or 3 days, is to try to get about 850 feet of fence installed, tight and secured and ready to go for when those cows come back again, because they'll guarantee they'll be back. They'll probably start coming by the end of the week. Got to shift priorities sometimes and do those things. So a couple years ago, I cut this road in right here that goes down and switches back, goes down off the hill where our solar panels are. I cut it in to get access down below the barn to flatten out a space to put up the solar panels. We need to get down even lower than the solar panels to get down to the property line. So we're going to recut this. We need to continue out into the woods a little bit farther before we turn and switch back around. That way we can get the distance covered for the elevation drop and not have it be super steep. So we came up last night, but carefully selected the path to continue out and mark the trees that need to come out. And most of the trees are little guys like this one, just little 2-3 inch trees. We've kept anything that we can that's as big as we can and try to just maximize the trees in here and still keep them in place and work the path around in a way that makes sense for the road, but also makes sense to keep as many trees as possible. So I just finished greasing the machine. I'm going to fire up the chainsaw and lay these down before going in with the excavator just because I think that'll simplify the task today. I need to be pretty efficient and pretty quick. And if I cut them and lay them, then I can grab them with the excavator and stack them relatively neatly to the side of the road and work on the road. Pull the roots. That way then I have less tree canopy to work with the boom and less to run into with the boom. Hopefully lower the risk of breaking a line or anything like that from hitting trees or limbs. Well, you can see just how steep that is. From this corner right about here, it drops 8 feet to there. And then from that corner back to where we started, it drops about 7 feet, 6 feet. So this is the steepest part. Make it around the corner to come into line with our property line. And there's the fence line here. Now he has a road on his side of the property line, and I cut that road for him a few years ago when he put that fence in. And it doesn't really do me any good to have that fence for my animals because, well, I'm standing over halfway up the fence, so it's an easy way to hop over. Now that we've made it down here, that wooden corner post set is the property corner that we're shooting for. So a handful more trees right here to take out that are marked, and we will get our way down to that corner. Then we can come across the bottom of the ridge right below the solar panels. Most of these trees were already leaning directly toward that fence. So despite my best efforts, they all fell in that direction. Usually I'm pretty good at directing the tree in the direction I want it to fall. Most of these trees, however, reminded me that I still have plenty of room for improvement. Now that I finally made it to the property corner, I needed to transition this road just a couple of feet downhill so that the downhill native cut of this road line would be right on the property boundary. Prior to this, I'd been staying a couple of feet uphill of the property boundary, which is where that existing fence is installed. This is to make sure that the slough from this new road cut doesn't just bury that fence and allows the two roads to coexist side by side while maintaining that property line. Now, if I ever wanted to come in and include this portion of my property as a fenced pasture for my animals, I could go in on the downhill side of this road that's on native ground and install fence posts and make sure that I had a good solid fence that my animals can't hop over, versus using the fence that's on the property line. It's just a better thing all the way around. As I worked my way across this open ridge, there was two main goals that I had in mind. The first, I wanted to keep the downhill side of the road on native ground. That would allow me to pound in fence posts and make sure that they were in native soil where they would stay tight and have the most chance of being secure. The second had everything to do with elevation and steepness of this fence line cut. Coming down off of this ridge into the hollow is a pretty steep drop. So if I can take this road surface down 2 or 3 feet extra where it's flat before it crests over into that hollow and push off that corresponding crest, then I can flatten out the difference between the high point and the low point, thereby making this fence line a lot less steep coming out from the well pad. The more I can improve that steepness and make it a little bit flatter, the easier it will be to maintain and check that fence line in the future, as well as making this road actually drivable as an access around our property. As I was making my way up this hill, a pretty good sized storm front blew in and brought with it a little bit of rain and quite a little bit of hail, right as I was making my way to the black, sticky soil. Luckily, between the tree canopy cover and the extra dry soil conditions, it wasn't a big deal and I was able to just keep going. Plus, I was pushing a lot of this crushed sandstone over top of that soil as a top dressing from the top down and helping to make sure that that elevation was in good shape. After a long day of digging, we made it down here to the well pad. I carved it out to native soil for the whole width, just so that I could make sure that my T-posts would pound into native soil and set into good firm dirt, and to make sure that the road was solid and stable. And then I didn't have to worry about it sloughing off and stuff over time. Right here is the native line. This was native soil, and out here is just extra spoils. That gains a lot of elevation, but at least we can put a solid, legitimate fence on this line and keep the cows out. It would have been great to have the dozer for that, but as many trees and roots and everything that was in there that I needed to not just rip out, but kind of strategically place along the way. I'm glad I did it with the excavator. So that hill behind us is definitely the worst spot. I know that Where I'm at right now is about 150 feet in elevation gained, and I think probably lucky if that's 400 feet distance. It's pretty steep. Not as steep as the water line.